All right. Good morning, everybody. It's really, really nice to see you all here in person and online. We have a set of slides for you all. There are a number of speakers. Some of them came all the way from around the globe from China, but then there are also many which are joining us from Europe and from Asia. It's our great pleasure to welcome you to this second event surrounding the Macroscopes exhibit here. It's this beautiful building, newly renovated for Indiana University Collections. And I give it over to Lisel for a brief welcome.
Thank you, Katy. Let's see. Let's see. So were you going to cover the beginning of the exhibit?
Yeah, so we have agenda for all of you. So again, you will see a number of presentations. Then there will be observations by Andrea Scharnhorst from the Netherlands. And then again, there are three guided tours, one by each of us. Todd, by Lisel, and by myself. I think they will be very, very different. So feel free to go on all three tours or pick one of us. And then at 12, we will let you go to your other business. It's really, really nice to see you all here. And I'm going to share a few thoughts of how this all started. It started at breakfast, just like we have breakfast today. And oftentimes you have some of the best ideas over breakfast somewhere. And that was a breakfast with Sarah Fabricant and André Skupin and many, many others that have been doing major contributions to mapping of intellectual spaces. And at that breakfast, the idea was born, why don't we frame some of these most beautiful maps that show the evolution of science and technology and educational landscapes and job market developments over time and hang them. And the idea was to just have, just like a journal, have submissions every year for maps and to pick the top 10 maps and put them on display. And it was wonderful to see the first display where map makers were super proud and giddy about having their own work framed and on public display to many, many audiences. And so over 10 years, we collected this way 100 maps. And we had many, many judges, including children, for the Science Maps for Children exhibit. And that was maybe the toughest jurors, because if they couldn't understand the map was out. There was no discussion. So if that wasn't relevant for children, this map didn't make it into the exhibit. And I think many of the other focused exhibits, maps for science policymakers, maps for researchers, maps for intellectual property and business decision-making, all of those were then judged by the respective target community. Often, experts and general audiences encountered the exhibit by just walking by, and then out of nowhere there were 100 maps. And that's hard to digest. So if you even spend 2 minutes per map, that's 100 minutes right there. And oftentimes you have kids with you or other family members, and so you just couldn't do it. And so the idea was born to also have atlases which go with the exhibit and that have a lot more information about why in the world you would want to map science, how you make these maps, but also how you can use them to forecast futures and pick desirable futures. And that was the initial trilogy, which you see here. And so we had beautiful displays of the exhibit. Do you want to take it from here?
And as we continued to work with the exhibit, write object descriptions for each of these two-dimensional maps, we found as the years went by, the 8th year, the 9th year, we started more and more often finishing our object labels with something along the lines of, and for the interactive vision, go online to ... Really what was happening is that the capabilities of moving online were increasing, and increasingly the static 2D format really felt constraining. And since our reason for being with this exhibit is to showcase and to share innovative best case examples of ways to use information visualization, it made sense then that we also went online. So starting in 2015, we moved to a position where we started accepting interactive visualizations rather than static 2D images into the exhibit each year. We call these software tools Macroscopes in deference to Joel de Rosnay, who envisioned their use as ushering in a new way of seeing things that would allow us to, in his words, to observe things that were at once too great, too slow, and too complex to see with our human eyes. The result is that we have a collection of 40 interactive visualizations. They range in subject matter from catalogs of the cosmos to to political discourse, and from city smellscapes to the shape of a bird's egg. So they're very wide-ranging in their topics, and they tackle societal issues such as refugee flows and income inequality and opioid addiction. So they are able to grapple with some of the biggest issues of our time. It's been our privilege to share these rich resources. Here's the compendium of 40 macroscopes there. It's really a dizzying array. And it's been our privilege to share these rich resources with others over the last decade. Todd has conducted a number of interviews that have been recorded with macroscope makers that are available on our website if you'd like to learn more about how they were built and some of the inspiration behind them. We've also shared maps of science in person at many events. The exhibit was on display at venues, including the David J. Sensor Museum at the CDC in Atlanta, where Katy led workshops on data visualization with CDC personnel. The exhibit took to the road to reach people in their places of learning, so it went to many arts and science festivals. And macroscope makers have also joined us for many events like this over the years, like our 24-hour online marathons, which we typically host in December, and keep your calendars open. There'll be another one this December, and also events like today. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Todd to talk about the next phase, and we'll look forward to hearing from some great macroscope makers.
Awesome, thank you. What you're seeing there is actually a page from the forthcoming Atlas of Macroscopes, so I'm getting a little plug in for that. When we were putting this page together, we went through about 20 years of venue photos, and I was really struck by this scenario, which I'm calling the "hey, look at this" scenario. And what you see here is just two or more people gather around and one person showing another person something interesting about the map. And there are times where I kind of think, oh, it'd be easier and cheaper to just have places and spaces be an entirely online experience. But my fear is that that would make it an entirely solitary experience, and we'd miss out on some of these moments like this where there's shared learning, shared exploration, shared discovery. So you can see here this again and again, and so with the kiosk, it's oftentimes in the form of like, hey, what does this button do? Or hey, if we move this slider from 10 to 100, how will that change the map? How will that change the way the thing looks? And so it's something that we really don't want to miss out on. And so I guess that's my way of saying, when this is all over, please come upstairs to where the exhibit is. Make a friend, take a friend. We're friendly. We'll be happy to show you around and explore these macroscopes together, because it's a really great experience. So macroscopes, making sense of the world through data visualization. From the very beginning, Places and Spaces has been an international effort intentionally, and that's reflected in our map makers and macroscope makers, our advisory board, our ambassadors. And we've really, it makes sense that our last, our 20th iteration would be macroscopes for a global perspective. And that's something that we've tried to maintain. And so when we put the call out for these, we were really struck by, in people answering to that macroscopes for a global perspective, how many of the works that we were seeing reflected the title of something you'll be hearing about later, the fundamental interconnectedness of all things. And so with these, for instance, you can take, with River Runner, you can virtually drop a water drop anywhere on the planet and watch as it moves through waterways totally irrespective of national borders, right? Or you can learn about shipping lines and the supply chain with the whole picture, and how, for instance, a stoppage in corn production in the Ukraine affects corn product production in Portugal, or how a shock to the US soybean production will affect poultry and pork production in places like Egypt, Indonesia, and Panama. And so this may seem kind of simplistic, but I think our fates are interconnected, and so the challenges that we face really are shared challenges, and they're global challenges. And I think that macroscopes are well equipped in that they can collect the massive amounts of data needed for a global perspective, collect it, make sense of it, make it accessible, and they're really keenly able to address these global issues. So I'll turn it back.
Thank you. Nicole, I know we are out of time. Sorry for that, but I will just cut my presentation short to 5 minutes. So I will get a warning after I'm done 5 minutes into my presentation. But we wanted to let you know that there will be a third decade of the exhibit, and we have been discussing this with our advisors and colleagues and friends around the globe of what that might be. Initially, we thought it would be the metaverse. We just move everything into the metaverse and we would just do new things in 3D, in virtual reality with people from all around the globe. But I don't think it's ready yet. And also there are other new developments which we believe are even more interesting than the metaverse could ever be. And so we decided that we will focus on envisioning intelligences. And yes, it will be human-human intelligence and human-machine intelligence, but there's also human in microbes. There's human in viruses, which we learned during COVID. There are fungi and trees which are intelligently interoperating. So we want to visualize how these intelligences operate, what they do, what they can and cannot do. And again, it's including linguistic, kinesthetic, communication, musical, emotional, and other intelligences, all of those, with a focus on collaboration and competition. I think we need competition also in that mix. It makes for better results. And we would like to inspire discussions about future sensors and actuators, because we are not also in engineering. Of course, we are interested in that, but also memory and reasoning, exploration and communication, and also shared goals. Oftentimes we can't do it alone. Even that wonderful breakfast you got here, you can't digest this without the microbes inside of your human body. And as many of you know, you have 37 trillion human cells and 40 trillion, so more than that, non-human cells inside of your skin surface, outer surface. So you are absolutely collaborating with them, and we want to visualize that better so that everybody's aware of how important all of those different intelligences are in our world. All right, now over to talks. So I get the privilege to give a brief overview of what I think the past, present, and future of maps and models of science and technology and education and jobs and other areas are. And it's really wonderful to be embedded in a set of other presentations that I think you will truly enjoy. One work that is more and more near and dear to my heart is about skill discrepancies with automation, robots, and AI moving in. Many of the human skills, the human labor, might not be needed any longer. I think humans will be able to focus on other parts that are uniquely human. And then the big question is, what parts are those, and how do you make money and get satisfaction out of those? And I think there are many good examples of how to do this, how to have a world of abundance, which I would love to see for all of us, because there are many people still which go to bed hungry. But I would also like to see a world where human ingenuity thrives and is not overburdened and overtowered by the other intelligences. So I think it's a really, really interesting ride we are going to have in front of us over the next 10, 20 years. I think lots of really interesting things will happen. And I'm just so glad that I'm born at the moment in time when I was born. I think it's super interesting. So here, we had the opportunity to work very closely with another team, James Evans and his team in Chicago, and really look at three landscapes, which is the landscape of jobs on the top, of courses in the middle, and then publications from the Web of Science data set. You could also bring in patents if you wanted to. We didn't do that here in this set. We needed to have a crosswalk to align these different data sets. But then after you align them, you can then actually see who is pushing and pulling on what, right? Is it first science that invents something and then jobs demand it, or is it jobs demanding something and then it needs to get taught in classrooms? Like we are now teaching large language models in many, many of the classes that are happening in Laddie Hall. Or is it maybe coming out of courses, innovation by students, and then going to the other two landscapes? And so it's super interesting to then also see across publications, courses, jobs, what are the main topics that are dealt with? How does this change over time? And again, who is pushing and pulling on what? I think this interplay between these three landscapes had not been studied before because the data didn't exist. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to leave you with some of these figures. Then there's another project that we collaborated on with Stasha Milijevic and Filipe Silva. And that is on visualizing big science projects that take 30 years to accomplish. Big particle colliders, big telescopes in the sky, like the Hubble telescope, for instance. But now also big efforts in the biomedical sciences, such as the Human Genome Project or the project we are all part of, the Human Reference Atlas, the ambition to map the human body at single cell resolution. So how does this unfold over time? What impact does this science have on other areas of science? Again, I would love to talk about this for an hour, but I don't have that time. We also recently started to interrelate the Human Reference Atlas digital objects with what is known from the literature. And Andreas, who is here also in the room, is now starting to interlink it with experimental data sets. And so you have publication evidence and experimental data evidence for the existence of certain digital objects in this Human Reference Atlas. There's an Atlas of Knowledge, which I think many of you have seen, and there are copies somewhere here. And then there's also the Atlas of Forecasts, trying to figure out how we can collectively pick desirable futures. And then last but not least, and that's why we all three are here back again, we managed, and it was not easy, we managed to write a book together. And all three of us have very different languages, very different cultural upbringings. And writing a book together was actually more challenging, more interesting than I ever imagined. But we did it. And it's now shipped off to MIT Press. And you will get to have it in stores for Christmas, not this year, but next year. It takes a year to get it printed and shipped back to US. And so it's our pleasure to share a first printout of it. If you're interested to see next year's Christmas presents, it's right on that table over there. And Lisel, Todd, it was a true honor to work on that together. I don't know if you wanted to say a few words or answer questions. Any quick questions? Okay. So maybe more Q&A during the curated talks. So our next speaker is David Chavalarias. He comes to us from France. He is the director of the Paris Complex Systems Institute, very near and close to our hearts here, because we have 150 network scientists and complex systems researchers at Indiana University. So it's wonderful to be connected to other complex systems institutes. He's also a permanent researcher at the Center of Social Analysis and Mathematics. And his research is truly situated at the crossroads between the cognitive sciences and complex systems. And so his work has been impactful via the exhibit, and I'm so glad that he could also present today. And so I give it over to David, and I think he will have to share his own slides. So I think we will stop sharing our slides here. And David, if you could do a sound check. And I see you unmuted.
Yes, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I will share. Okay. Nice. I am sharing now. Yes. Well, yes. Okay. No, I think it's okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I will present quickly some of the macroscopes that we did in at CNRS. More particularly on the.
We also see the webinar chat. Maybe it's you share the entire screen.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
Thank you.
Okay. So so I will explain you and show you some results we had with Macroscope to better understand our digital space and also the globalization of information circulation. So to begin with, just a few quick notions. We will look at the information circulation on Twitter. So on Twitter, when you have somebody like, for example, Greta Thunberg here, that is saying something, then the accounts that receive this message can decide to relay the message to other persons, which is called a retweet. And what we have done is that we have set some observatory on Twitter since 2016 until now. And so we have collected about 1 billion tweets on different topics like politics, climate change, COVID, etc. So we have observed all these exchanges. And when you observe these exchanges for a sufficiently long time, what you see is that you end up with some group of people that interact more with each other than with the outside of the group. It's like when you observe children talking with each other, you identify immediately who are his friends. So when you have this kind of information with some mathematical tools and informatical tools like cluster detections, you can identify these groups. And then after you can produce map of the full landscapes where you will have all the interaction between the different Twitter accounts and how they are related to each other. So for example, if you do that for climate change, so we have observed climate change since 2016. This is the landscapes worldwide of climate change in the year 2019. So here, every dot is a Twitter account, and you see small links here that are the path of information. So when you process this with visualization tools, you can show how the Twitter debates on climate change is structured worldwide. So here you clearly see two blocks. On the left, you see the pro-IPCC, so people that are accepting the idea of climate change from anthropogenic causes. And on the left, on the right, you see the climate denialist with, I won't detail, but just to show you that you have these big things that just appear. So after, when you have this kind of representation, you can study why are these kind of polarization emerging, what are the narrative inside, etc. So we will now dive in this kind of structure. And here in each big cluster, you have subcluster, which has the color here, which correspond to the geography. So for example, here you have the UK, the US are around here. Here you have Australia. And sometimes also you have cluster made from activists, like for example, Greta Thunberg, etc. So now we'll dive into this map. And for example, you can do the same thing with a pandemic. So what happens during the COVID? So during the COVID, what was interesting is that you have a structure where you have a big cluster here in blue of people that were relaying reliable information about the pandemics, and mainly it was international organizations, and this is a big cluster about English speakings, relays about COVID information. And on opposite, you have another cluster which is made about anti-vaxxer. On a picture like that, you have about 200,000 accounts taking part in it. So again, the links that you see here are the circulation of information. And what you see in this more complex landscape is that it is beginning to be bipolarized. So you have one bipolarization here on the English speaking. So it's mostly the United States between the people relaying COVID information and anti-vaxxer. And you have another bipolarization here. This is France between, again, the government information and the anti-vaxxer. And what you see here in purple is a stream of information. It's this information that is flowing from US anti-vaxxer to French anti-vaxxer. And so you can see that at the global level, the pandemics act as a strong bipolarizer over all the different countries with some information that flows from the US to the French and back. And also here you have Italy, here you have Poland, etc., etc. So now we'll look at the interaction between all these different arena of debates. So here clearly you see that you begins to have some split at the national level between the different groups. This creates polarization. And after these pandemics, when you come back to the climates, so you still have the bipolarization like that, but now you have this small group here, which actually is France, and is this a new group of French climate denialists. And what you see is that the pandemics has created a space for conspiracy theory that were later reused for the climate debates. And you can clearly see this on this visualization. So what you have this is the size of the bar is a number of people you have in a given community. So here you have all the pro-climate people. Here you have all the climate denialist people. And this is the same analysis for the COVID. So here you see that almost everybody that was climate denialist was also in another observatory anti-vaxxer. And this is the split by countries. So you see that you have an alignment between being anti-vaxxer and being climate denialist on all the countries at once, almost. So you can cross-reference these different databases. And with this, you can explain how there was a strong climate denialist movement in France in the spring 2002, because it was a community that was first mobilized on anti-vaxxers that was growing, and after, when COVID was over, they remobilized on the climate debates. And we can clearly see this dynamically. So again, we will make a zoom. This is a climate landscape. So we'll make a zoom on this part, which is the French denialist, and this part, which is the French pro-climate. And you see here that the French denialist here, which is the curves in orange here. So this is the number of active users per community, and this is the French denialist. And in black, this is the IPCC. So you see it's much lower. So you see that the French denialists, they mostly are born in July 2022. There is like a big explosion of there. And when you cross-reference them with anti-vax, you see that in France, this is for a stat for France, 83% of climate denialists were also contributing to the anti-vax movement. And also, maybe it's not surprising, but more than 80% of them has relayed the Kremlin propaganda. So propaganda from Russia about Ukraine war, etc., etc. So with this macroscope, we can observe at large scale the debates and understand how group of mobilization and disinformation move from one topic to the other. And one of the characteristics of the new denialist account in 2022 in France was that there was actually opportunistic. They were not specialized in climate science, but just 6 months before there was an anti-vax movement, and after they switched to climate deniers. So just to end, I will show you how you can understand how people try to win an election with this kind of polarization. So this is the evolution of the political landscape in France, again, between 2016 and 2022. On every map here, the left is on the left and right parties are on the right in blue. Every line here is a circulation of information. And you see a deep transformation into the structure of the political landscapes. So before we go from far left here to far right by moderate parties, and now the far left, the moderate parties, which are here in red and blue, are collapsing, and you have a strong extreme group here that are from far right to far left. So this is the evolution until 2022, and maybe you know, but in France, we have in 2024 a new election, which was a surprise election because after the European election, the president decided to dissolve the parliament. So we have a new election for the parliament. So if we look at the structure of the political landscape just at this moment, it was again a little different. And this time, what is surprising is you have a clear split between the left here in red and the right and the far right in pink and dark blue. So at that moment, you have 3/4 left, center right, which is here, and far right, which is here. And the first pre-round polls were announcing that the far right could have an absolute majority if this force here, these two groups here, were not united against them. And so the challenge for them was to prevent the union, which usually happen in France, between the left and the right when the far right is in position to win. So now if we take these political landscapes, which is all the retreat on all the topics, and we look topic per topics, what is the structure? So this is here account our position at exactly the same place. We just highlight the links that are related to the topics. So if you look at climate change, you see that it's only the left and there is almost nobody on the other side. So it's not really a line of polarization. If you look at the Ukraine war, then you see that the line of polarization it puts the left and the right parties against the far right parties. So left and right are the same position on this Ukraine war, that you should defend Ukraine, and the far right are just against to help Ukraine. So, and if you look at, for example, another topics, for example, Israelo-Palestinian conflicts, then the division go just straight in the middle of the moderate parties. So you have on one side the left, on the other the right and the far right. This means that at that moment in France, so last summer, if you want to win the election or to help the far right to win the election, you have to promote this kind of narratives and of framing of the debates so that the left could not union the right against the far right. And actually, this is what happened. We could see that on that topics, there was accounts that were very active, and that had one as this area of influence which was covering all the left, and the other was covering all the right, and they were tearing apart all these parties so that they could not union against the far right, so that the far right wins. So this was the scenario. Unfortunately, he was not successful, but we really could see this scenario put in place. So now, a question for you. When we think about what is happening now in the United States, and not in particular the last buzz with these cats and immigrants, I think that my interpretation is that it is not really about cats and immigrants. It's just using some fake news to frame the debate so that we talk about immigration, whatever how we talk about that. Because immigration is one of the topics that could make win one side over the other. So I will stop here and just thanks also my collaborator that works with me on these topics, and I'm open to the question.
Thank you, David. Very, very important topics. And it occurs to me that we have the most sophisticated communication infrastructure we ever had on this planet. And still many people can't talk to each other. They just live in their own bubble, talk to their own team, and try to push their own agenda. And I think that's not the best for our planet. I wonder if there are any questions in the room here. All right. There will be more Q&A later, David. Please stay on if you can.
No problem.
And I'm just very, very impressed by the beauty, the insightfulness, and also the very, very actual data that you just showed us, right? This is impacting all of us, and this can be going awfully wrong if you don't watch it. And I think it's really, really important to hold up democracy. There is actually one question in the room now.
So in all of these visualizations, I'm seeing two major groups that are kind of fighting each other. And I'm wondering to what extent it's the tools and the systems that we use to communicate that are creating these groups, and not necessarily some natural outcome of human interaction. Right? Is it the way that Twitter is prioritizing the feed, or is it the way that people connect?
So this is a very important question, and it would be quite long to answer, but to say things short, there is different things. One is that most of the big digital platforms like Twitter, Facebook, etc., are failing because they amplify polarization by many means. And for example, we have made some audit of Twitter, and what we have shown is that what people get in their feeds is 50% enriched in toxic content compared to what they subscribe to. So this means that the algorithmic recommendation of Twitter by design is amplifying the hostility between people. So this is one thing, and there is a lot of other failures like that. And the second element is that you have actors like, for example, Russia or China that are using these networks to sow division. And this is very well documented in the United States for the 2016 elections. And we have seen this also in Europe for different elections, and lately in France for the European election. So they are using targeting advertising, fake accounts, fake websites, etc., to amplify the framing on the different topics. And for example, what I showed you just for the case in France, what we have identified is that you have some accounts which were most likely driven by Russia actors or people close to Russia propaganda that were trying to amplify the framing of the debate on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is, I think, an important topic. But at that time in the election, we were almost only talking about that, and we could not talk about other topics. So by forcing this framing, then you split the society in a way that you know that it will be good for you at the election. So there is these two levels. One is the design of the platforms, which are really failing. And the other is that the use of these vulnerabilities and also all the digital infrastructure, like, for example, targeted advertising by malicious actors like China, Russia, Iran, etc.
So if I may ask a follow-up, given this research, what features do you think you might want to add into these networks to make them robust to such manipulation?
Yeah, so good question. Actually, if we want to solve this, we have to act at the systemic level. So to act at the individual level, platform level, and also low system level. So I cannot detail all, but if I concentrate on what we can do on the platforms, first, we have to force them to correct their recommendation algorithm. You have the recommendation algorithms, as I have told you, they have some systemic risk inside. If you amplify toxicity by 50% at the global level over a population, then it cannot go well. So, and this is really the responsibility of the platform because it is inside the algorithm. So there is measure like that, make audits of the platforms and force them to correct the balance and to have a more neutral. I'm not talking about moderating here. I'm just talking about not amplifying dimensions that are harmful for people. You can have for example, you can have a period where the news are toxic because people are there is a war, etc. This is normal. So you have a given level of toxicity. But if on top of that you have algorithms that increase this level, whatever the level baseline is, then this is a problem. So this is the first things. And another, just to be quick, because there could be, we could talk a lot about that. So it's something very easy to do. For example, you could force the platforms to allow the user to identify, for example, French citizen, US citizen, etc. So there is, for example, in French, there is a very simple way to do that because we all pay our tax through government platforms, which gave us a token that certify us as French citizen. So in 2 weeks, you can develop a connector to that, and Yeah, you can have a connector to that and allow people to identify them as a French citizen. If you have this, this means that you can allow a Twitter user or platform user to say, okay, on that debate, I want only to see people that are on my country. So I want to filter out all people that are not really French citizen or US citizen. If you do that, then you remove all the AI, all the bots, all the foreign interference at once. And it's really easy to put in fact. So this is two examples among many, but just to tell you that first, there is a really responsibility from the platforms, and second, that there are solutions, they are not costly, they are easy to implement, but it's just that nobody cares.
I think there are many people here which dearly care, and we have a number of researchers also at Indiana University which do very active research on it. David, we could talk and probably should talk for this about this for a long time, much longer time, but we have a very tight schedule here.
Yeah,
so we are going to thank you, and maybe we can have a round of applause. I think this was a great presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you again for this really impressive and important presentation of how data visualizations can make a difference in our decision making, but also in the infrastructure we are creating for ourselves. The next two speakers are Nicolas Gutehrlé and Iana Atanassova. In the interest of time, I will just give it over to both. They're going to present on exploring archives through entities and their relations. Please use 7 minutes. Nicole will give you a warning, and then we have a little bit of time for Q&A. Please.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good. Do you mind if I share my screen? Might be easier for moving slides.
It might be faster on our end. I just go forward every single time. Just say next slide and I do it.
Okay. So thank you all, and thanks all the people at Mapping Science for the invitation. So I'm Nicolas Gutehrlé. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Université de Franche-Comté in France. And I'm very happy to present this work entitled Exploring Archive Through Entities and Relations, which was done with my colleague Iana Atanassova. So next slide, please. So, as you might be aware, in the last decades, archives and libraries worldwide have massively digitized their collections, and so which have been able to open them to a wider audience other than scholars. And also, thanks to automatic methods such as OCR, it's been able to extract the textual content of these digitized images, and so these documents can be explored and through search engines. Next slide, please. But the exploration and exploitation of archival collections still remain a challenge, especially when done through a search engine and keyword search, as when doing a keyword search, they are often overwhelmed by the abundance of documents that are retrieved, and especially when the textual content of documents are obtained through OCR method, then it becomes even more difficult since this textual content lack structure, and so it becomes very difficult to search a specific section of the document. And so in recent years, there has been a few projects to deal with this issue, such as Yunwei or Impresso in Europe, which propose to add semantic annotations to the textual content of documents. So for instance, annotating dimensions of people, location, and dates, so that when doing a search through a search engine, the user can filter the documents according to these semantic annotations, and thus be less overwhelmed, at least by the abundance of documents. But there has also been other recent works that propose to go further than search engines and propose to build augmented search interfaces, which will provide a novel perspective on the corpus, and more specifically, that would allow to switch between a close and distant reading of the collection. So for instance, Adam Yatov in 2021 was proposing to generate the timelines from events that are mentioned in the documents that are obtained through a keyword search. And so instead of accessing the document through the search engine, access them through the events that are mentioned in the documents. So next slide, please. And so in the wake of such works, we're proposing an augmented search interface that would allow to explore collection of historical documents, such as the one you've seen early in a previous slides. And here we want to focus or access them through the lens of entities and the relation between them. And so this work is part of the Montagne project, which was funded by the Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region in 2023, during which I worked as a PhD student. And our aim for this project was to propose a novel approach to extract dimensions of entities and relation in historical documents in French. So for that, we've built a corpus of periodicals that were published in the 19th and 20th centuries in France. And we propose a novel approach to extract these relation and mentions called Eliger, which relies on lexicosyntactic patterns. And as I've said, the main objective of this project was to develop this method. And so we've only started proposing these augmented search interfaces. So we've started building a prototype, which we did build with the PyVis Python library. Next slide, please. And so here is only the main interface of the prototype, where here you can see on nearly 200 different relations that we've automatically extracted with our method from a subset of our corpus. And next slide, please. And if we zoom in here, you can see different entities. So in pink, you can see a person, in purple, a date, and in green, a location. And so here with this graph, we can already learn interesting things about the entities, such that this person, François, was born in 1762 and was born in the city of Souvent. Next slide, please. And here again, we can learn other things, such as these two people, François and Amaury, were both born in the same city, which is Poligny, which was found in 1889. And so here, I hope I'm able to convey this, that this distant reading tool is a different way to access the corpus, since here we can access the corpus through the entities. And so we could start from this distant reading perspective, and from the entities go back to the original document and study dimensions of entity directly in context. And so it seems to make sense to focus on entities, especially for doing historical researches. Next slide, please. And so we intend to pursue the development of this interface. As I've said, this is only a prototype as of now. And so, for instance, working with other frameworks such as Neo4j, but we think that such interface may be interesting for conducting historical research, such as genealogical or prosopographical works, and for instance, assisting in learning the history of a entity. And so it could then help in building a personal knowledge of a corpus. And so we're planning to experiment with simpler formats, such as markdown files that could be read with common software such as Obsidian and Cosma, that can help building some sort of Zettelkasten system, and where the user could explore a corpus and build his personal knowledge of a collection. And we're also considering experimenting and combining this interface with other visualization methods. So for instance, observing how strong is a relation between entities through a heat map, or is observing the spatial relation between entities through a map, which we've experimented with in previous works, or generated timelines of the main events that occurred in the life of an entity, which also we've discussed in the previous works. Next slide, please. Sorry. And so, oops, sorry, there has been an issue. 2 slides after that, please, and sorry. Next
That's
one.
all I have.
Oh, okay, so it's my fault, sorry. I wanted to put the map slide. So yeah, so thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for questions.
Very good. Thank you so very much. We have time for a quick question. Nicolas, Iana, it was really nice to see you here at the ISI conference last year. Thanks for coming all the way and also bringing some of the Macs back to France. I hope you and David are also going to talk more. You're very close. You're both in France. Are there any questions here or online? Okay, nothing online. Are you using in any kind of way, shape, and form large language models?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Are you using large language models?
Oh, yeah. Not yet, because the issue at first when we are starting working on this project is that when you're working with historical documents and even French documents, you're lacking resources. And we started this project before the rising of big LLMs such as ChatGPT and all other models. So we went for a linguistic-based approach, but we are planning actually to combine our approach with LLM later, since it can be a very useful tool, especially for dealing with OCR issues or noise in the documents.
Very good. Thank you so very much. Please do stay on. There might be more questions on chat or after the presentations. All right, there's one more slide here. Maybe that's the one you wanted to present.
These were the maps I wanted to show for showing the relation, but we can no, it's fine. It's my fault. We can discuss that later, maybe.
Thank you. All right, our next presenter actually traveled all the way from China for this event. Dr. Yunwei Chen, he is a professor and specially appointed researcher and also PhD supervisor at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. He also did 1 year research fellowship here at Indiana University way back in time. Since then, many of his colleagues and I think also friends have visited here and been here for other 1 year stays. I think there's a really nice cohort now of different researchers coming from the Chinese Academy of Science here. Yunwei was also the gentleman who translated the exhibit into Chinese and then brought it to the Chinese Academy of Science, actually did different branches of the academies. And so it's really, really a pleasure to have you here. So please take this phone.
Thank you. Thank Katy for the introduction. I will give a brief presentation. The topic is mapping the development and structural science, but I will focus on how to use the community detections for in academic mixed networks. So this topic has a origin from maybe 15 years ago when we meet with Katy. Let me have a look at the history. The left that paper also to was to understand if and how to the collaboration, the authors at the micro level impact collaboration patterns among institutions and countries at the macro level. But this is just the question or idea discussion with Katy in 2009. But it's possible to review networks of different skills and analyze the interactions between them. On the left, the paper just answer part of this question. So in the past more than 10 years, I want to answer this question. So at the different level, co-authors, co-institutions, co-countries, that's the many kinds of options to co-works, publication, citations, and co-author. Just as the discussion by Katy's presentation 20 minutes before. Actually, the courses, the jobs, and the background also do such analysis, but it's very hard. It's a very hard task how to bring this different network together for observation and analysis. It's a big challenge. So the challenge is we have to two attempts in mixed network. Actually, there's 3 basic types of hybrid or mixed networks. One single node and multi-relationship. Another is multi-node and multi-relations. And the third one is multi-node and single relationship. I only carry out the top two types. Let's have the background is the community declaring method for what we can use, but this method cannot answer the question. So The first attempt is community detection in single node and multi-relation hybrid networks. We can co-author the collaboration networks. The second is co-author citation networks. Then the right one is combined together. But combined is easy, but the community detection is very hard. And the second is different nodes and different relations. So it's difficult, much more difficult. So we have used some new methods for the community detection. We use the method is carried out by our group is metal path selection and meaning. And there's the whole name. We name that MESME SRP, just the standing as the formal research, and we present this method. This slide also. This work has been presented last year, EC conference, but we cannot be here. That's a student present it for us. I will not introduce the detail, but we can cause the map. So at the right one, we can find it's very complicated. So how to find the community is a very big challenge. So this is the conclusion. I will save time. So the future networks, now the work is at static analysis. So future we want to do the dynamic analysis and the description and the structure discovery to understand the evolutionary laws. This is the basic idea. I also applied the funding from the Chinese NSF to supporting the future analysis. So this is my group short. What do we do? Okay. This is the former tool. We just want to use the network, but which network is better to use to find the science structure? Actually, we do interesting work. You can find the co-citation is not the good one. Maybe some direct citations combined with some BM25. Maybe it's a better choice. This is another work of our group for the disruptive technology identification data show here. Okay, this is my conference. On the left top, Katy gave a presentation. I host two conferences. Yeah, today's conference will be in December 4th to 6th. Welcome, everybody come visit Chen. Okay. Finish. Okay. Thank you. Questions?
I think it's really interesting to look at dynamics in science and technology and education and training and everywhere else. And it looks like feedback cycles might be a key to understanding how these systems work. Have you looked at feedback cycles? So these are cycles like, for instance, somebody gets hired at a university, gets startup, uses that startup wisely to hire some good postdocs. The postdocs generate good papers. Because of these amazing papers, you get more funding, and that's a positive feedback cycle, right? But that cycle could also unfold in a negative way for all kinds of good reasons. And then that also will drive and not drive certain things. Have you looked at feedback cycles in science?
Thank you. Thank you for Katy's question. I want still not to do at the feedback. Do not such analysis. But a good suggestion, I think. Yes, we can do further research. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? So I hope you all get excited and interested to visit. I think it looks like a beautiful place. And I think you have a very, very strong research groups there also. And I think we want these collaborations between countries, even though sometimes politicians do other things. I think researchers are really, really important diplomats in the mix of the world. Any other questions? comments. Maybe one comment question. We would love to have the exhibit back in China. What do we do? Well, maybe that's the way of doing it. So Todd, you're on it, right? I think we would really love to have the macroscopes, also the interactive data visualizations, travel back.
Yeah, this is a real photo. This is a real photo of surround our institute. Yeah, yeah. The new region of Chengdu, just at a park. As a park of the city is park is the city. So our building is in park. Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay,
that
thank
is
you.
very, very beautiful. And it looks like the skyscrapers are still growing in the back. There are still cranes right there. All right, in the interest of time, let's do another round of applause, please. Thank you so much. All right, there's one more presenter, and I wonder if she's on.
Hi.
All right. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you here. I know you had some other commitments as well. It's a true pleasure to have you here, to have industry representation here. We want these academic industry partnerships and collaborations, and of course, ultimately also government researchers that are needed here because they have to implement more data-driven decision-making. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read your bio, but give it straight to you, Sarah. That gives you more time to present. And I wonder if the presentation will be in here or if you're running your own slides. You had a beautiful map in the exhibit, which is here.
Yes, and that's all I need really. And thank you so much for helping me put things together. Maybe I can start by sharing a little bit why this project is one of my all-time favorites in my career in scientific publishing. I've been with Elsevier for 18 years, and at the beginning of my career, we were looking at ways to explore the data that we have in Scopus, which is basically an indexing and abstracting service that is fairly comprehensive. So this project dates a little bit, but at the time, my colleague and I had also become first-time parents not so long ago. And so we were very interested into what will be our legacy for the children and what should we do. So we thought, let's, combine the two things for efficiency. And we came up with this visualization where we thought this would be able to help explain to a child what science looks like. So basically, the way it's organized is that it groups journals around topics by citation networks. And therefore, with the colors, we can see different zones of science. And we really wanted to focus on this fundamental interconnectedness of all things. Because now that my children have grown up a bit more, I see how they can very easily think in category. For example, at school, there's different subjects, they're taught by different people, and it all seems quite disconnected and distinct. But in fact, we are all part of this very vast knowledge universe with fields clustering into galaxies and each topic or star connected to others through the scientific process, which we can track through scholarly publications. And so we thought by adding some very simple questions for each of the fields, this would then help us demonstrate how, in fact, science is ultimately interconnected and building upon this common human knowledge foundation. I think that's it for me. I realize I'm in very, very prestigious company here with some of the most advanced scholars in the map. So I feel extremely humbled and honored to be here. And as an industry representative, it's such a pleasure to be able to see how the field has moved on and where we are since the very first steps I took with that map quite a few years ago.
Sarah, thank you so very, very much. I think you get a round of applause from all of us here. And we absolutely love to have elements for children in the exhibit, from the puzzle maps, the slide and seek exercise to other elements. And I think your map is also very, very relevant for what we all need to understand. And sometimes science has to be messy to get certain things invented. And so I think that was a nice take home that actually many of the kids that were serving as reviewers got and appreciated. So I think it was wonderful to have such submission, and I'm so glad that it was included in the exhibit.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's great pleasure and a great, great pride for me.
Super, please stay on. We have one more treat, which is by Andrea Scharnhorst. She comes from the Königliche Akademie der Wissenschaften, the KNAW in the Netherlands. She has her bio right here. So I'm in the interest of time, I'm not going to read this bio either, but I let just Andrea say her, share her observations.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the program. And I will also share the feeling Sarah just conveyed of being a proud map maker. And the map we did is now, I think we did that in the 2009 or 2010. It's also many, many years. But when I was thinking about saying something or sharing something with all the people present, it's actually that having been a map maker is not just information visualization. So you also spoke about that, Sarah. You spoke about the emotional aspect and how that interfered with your career and where you were there in your personal life at that time. So I think information visualization is very important, and everybody in the room or everybody online will also know that, because we all kind of thrown or thorn between Scylla and Charybdis of having to deal with very specific information on the one side, and on the other side need an overview and an orientation. So that's the old dilemma of you being universal and being special, and how to translate. And information visualization can help us to do this. And Places and Spaces always created landmarks in this by teaching material, by the MOOC the group developed, the tools, the platform the group developed. But I think what makes this enterprise of Places and Spaces very special is that there was an aesthetic and artistic element to that. I know from being one of the map makers, Katy herself and her whole team really fought for which each of the map makers, yeah, so that we not only create maps which are accurate or as accurate as they can be in the information visualization, but that we also create maps which talk to the heart and the soul and the emotions of those who make them and of those who are looking at them. So they tools to evoke further conversations. And I'm very pleased, Katy, to hear about the topic you all have chosen, the various intelligences, what you told about at the beginning, because I think it's spot on, it's very timely. And we have to think about, what do we want as human beings? What do we want machines to do for us, with us, around us? How can we protect us from those machines we have created? David has brought that to the attention. So I think I'm very pleased to see that Places and Spaces is still standing and that it still goes on. And I hope it keeps inspiring generations, because it's also just the start of a path. It's not an end. Yeah, the geographic maps people did when they started to measuring our globe, yeah, die Vermessung der Welt, that's a German book which talks about all those early map makers. That was just the beginning, the very early beginning of enabling globalization, which then has gone on for centuries or even longer. And I tend to think about all those maps and the macroscopes for which the Places and Spaces is a platform to bring people together in a similar way. And thank you very much for having me on the program.
Andrea, thank you. I think you get also a round of applause from all of us here. I think the exhibit has created a really wonderful community of caring people that have a lot of their own subject matter expertise, be it from cartography or geography or sciences or data science and other many different disciplines. And we learn to talk with each other and to each other. And I think this is maybe the most important and most valuable piece. But at the same time, we also now have maps around the globe and in the Library of Congress. And we hope to have videos of the macroscopes also in the Library of Congress soon, because we can't keep those software artifacts alive for more than 10 or 20 years. And going forward, it will be more interactive. There will be cameras that can see what you feel, what facial expressions you have. So I think that will be even harder to keep alive for a long time. So again, thank you all for being here today. We have a Q&A that might be very short. Maybe do this in the room, but we will also keep the Zoom alive. So those of you which would like to talk with David or Iana or others, please come up and just come to this computer and talk with them. I think they would love to see your questions and your faces, because they only see a small feed from this room. And then we will also start the tours. And before we do this, we would like to thank a number of people. Lisel, did you want to do this, or I can do it? Yeah, so we had fantastic hosts here. It's just amazing how much support we got for the exhibit, also for the events which are happening here. So we would especially like to thank Brian Woodman, Jake Good, and Bill Bass. Then we have a number of our colleagues, and also Kaya Hiers-Verbrek here from the Ladi School, which are taking photos to document everything for those which are in classrooms right now, or are traveling, or are in the HubMap demo day. So that's actually what's occupying most of our team currently. That is another event going on just today. But then we also have technical experts like Haley Scruggs, which you saw from time to time helping here with the technology, but also Nicole, our timekeeper. And oh my God, you do so many things for us. Thank you, Nicole. And also the Ladi IT team, of course, for the online event support. And last but not least, today's speakers. So again, thank you for coming from faraway lands. It's wonderful to see you all in person from time to time, but also to see new updates on your research online. And I think it's wonderful that we have Zoom and Teams and all the other ways to connect now. But it's so much nicer many times to just be here in person. So thank you for coming in virtually and in person, and to share your experiments of how to do better and more impactful, more actionable data visualizations with us. So again, please share us for curated exhibit tours, open discussion, and refreshments. There's still some bagels left in the back and some fruits from what I can see. All right, thank you all.